Welcome to week 5 of our course of recruitment, placement, and selection. This week we are going to discuss chapter 5, and in chapter 5 we learn about the strategic recruitment process and external recruiting. So in this week's chapter we have a couple of objectives that we want to try to meet. We want to first come away with an understanding of the difference between an open and targeted recruitment. I think your text does a very good job of identifying the differences and the key characteristics of each one of those types of recruitment. So we will go through that a little bit. We're going to learn about a variety of recruitment media. I think we have all at this point in our lives become familiar with the various types of social media, how businesses and organizations are now using it as recruitment tools. Some are even using it as retention tools and ways to keep their workforce engaged. This week's objectives also include creating a persuasive communication message. So as you're thinking about that recruitment media and how you are posting your positions, you want to be cognizant of the message that is being communicated to your audience. Who is your audience? Are you using the right message? Are you using those attractive wordings and colors and combinations so that individuals are drawn into your organization so that they want to learn more about what your organization is about, your values, your strategy, and your goals? We'll actually look at a communication message in recruitment and decide how we feel about that. And then lastly, we want to be able to utilize a variety of recruitment sources. And so we know as HR professionals, we can only get so much done in a day. And there are a variety of different sources that we can use in addition to social media that can help us to recruit, especially when we're talking about external recruitment. So we have things like temporary agencies, we have organizations called headhunters when we're looking at our really top talent. We're looking at talent acquisition firms that even though you have an in-house talent acquisition team, those firms do sometimes what you're not able to do. They reach a little bit further outside of your demographic pool. They're able to resource and check their files and make sure that they don't have someone that may be a perfect fit, perfect candidate. Right? We've been talking up to this point in the semester about having the perfect fit. It's not just about having a body in a position. It's not just about having a person in a job, but it really is based on acquiring talent so that you have that organizational fit. And a lot of times using those outside recruitment sources are a really good tool to making sure that you have what you're looking for your organization. So first, let's talk about what actually, what is external recruitment? What does it look like? What does it mean to us as human resource professionals? And so, as we've discussed up to this point, the ability to recruit, to acquire, to retain talent all begins with strategic planning. So much so that was the very first chapter in our text. We discussed strategic planning. And the key to effective recruitment is that it has to be an ongoing process. So in previous chapters, we've talked about the importance of having sound planning. That planning has to be in alignment with our legal compliance, and we did some exercises on legal compliance. We addressed that in chapters 2 and 3. We also talked about the need to conduct solid job analysis to be inclusive of the rewards that our organizations can provide. And we discussed that last week in chapter 4. And so as you are developing your recruitment plan and your strategic recruitment plan, you really need to keep all those things in mind as a foundation for a strong and effective recruitment process. And so make sure that you're not overlooking those as you're going through your process of establishing a strategic plan. And so as you'll see on the next slide that we're going to take a look at, as well as in your text, the basis for external recruitment for an effective recruitment process is strategic planning. And that strategic planning is made up of essentially three key concepts. The first one is determining the message that you want to communicate. You need to determine what is the job that you are advertising for, what is the position or positions that you're looking to fill, and then what message do you want associated with those positions to obtain and acquire that talent that in fact has that knowledge, skills, abilities, and other opportunities for growth within your organization. Determine your audience, right? So, here we're talking about an external audience, but in the next chapter, we'll talk about an internal audience. And so, what does that look like as we draft our communication that it meets the needs of that audience and it draws that audience into us? And then finally, and probably I will echo this through every single chapter in this text, and you need to be mindful of it in your careers, is that you always have to consider your legal implications and your obligations. Sometimes the best of intentions meet us with some legal obligations that we may have forgotten. And so that was really the purpose of having some of the exercises we had early on in the course, was so that we were aware of some of those laws and regulations that we as human resource professionals have to follow. And we always want to keep those in the forefront of our mind. I wouldn't even say in the back of your mind, in the forefront of your mind as you are conducting this process of strategic planning. And so here we have a chart that gives us pretty much a flow of what strong strategic recruitment planning looks like. And you can actually find this chart on page 208 of your text. But we need to figure out, first, what is recruitment? And I think we've talked about this in just about every single one of the chapters that we have reviewed thus far. But we learned very early in the course that recruitment, again, is that ongoing process of attracting employees who possess the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics that will aid our organizations in fulfilling their strategic goals. That is our job as recruiters, as talent acquisition coordinators, whatever title your organization uses for recruitment and talent acquisition, that is our main function. And so this ongoing process is identified in our book again, and here on this chart as a flow chart. And it really is this continuous flow chart. So where the chart is missing a step is that loop back around, right? And so we'll see as we go through this process and the rest of the course how we start with defining our recruitment goals, and we get down to the bottom where we implement our recruitment strategies and we're evaluating our outcomes via metrics. But then we have to loop back around and we take those metrics as informed data and we revise what our goals are, and we start the process all over again. So it doesn't just end at the end of a fiscal year or at the end of a hiring splurge. It really is this ongoing practice and process that we really do try to refine as time goes on. And so we will use this flow chart here on the screen to discuss how that strategic recruitment planning process should work. And in addition to that, we'll actually have another mechanism for learning this process and implementing everything that we've learned up to this point in our midterm. So this is midterm week. And in your midterm, you will be tasked with developing your own recruitment plan for an identified organization and position. And so it may sound a little intimidating, but it really isn't. You really do have the skill set to complete that assignment successfully. It's just a matter of drawing upon each one of the blocks that we have added to our repertoire up to this point. So let's take a look at this flow chart in bits and pieces so that we know exactly what this recruitment planning process really does look like step by step. And so I won't go over each individual step because I think your book does an awesome job of some of the steps in the process, but there are some that I really want to hit home and make sure that you are aware of. And that first one is defining your recruitment goals. Very first step in the process, right? And so our text lines out two concepts within that recruitment goal establishment. And so we have goals for attraction and we have goals for speed. And so as we're talking about the goals for attraction, we go back to the approach and the model that we talked about a few chapters ago. And we're looking at either attracting someone to the job fit or we're attracting someone to the organizational fit. And we've had a full discussion board on what works better. Is it your job fit or your organizational fit? And it really does depend on your organization's approach to recruitment and talent acquisition. There isn't a wrong answer. I have personally just found that it's beneficial in your retention of your candidates and your employees if you implement that person organization fit. But depending on the nature of the work that you're doing, sometimes that person job fit is just as effective. So you want to keep that in mind as you're establishing your goals, your recruitment goals. What fit are you looking at? What approach are you looking for to attract your talent to your organization? And then there is the goals for speed. And those goals for speed are twofold. And I think we all have them. We have the immediate needs, right? We have the firefighter needs, the ones where we have a vacancy. It is vital work that's done in the organization and we need it filled right now. And so that may include us having to skip a couple of steps in our process and, can sacrifice the long term just to make sure that we are not drawing out a vacancy process or a talent acquisition process too long. But at the same time, you also have these long-term needs and long-term planning that needs to be considered. And the two are a balancing game, right? There's a balancing test between the two of them because, of course, you have managers that want you to fill their vacancies. They want them filled now, and they want them filled with quality candidates. They want them filled with individuals who want to be there, who are going to show up for work, and who are really going to help you fulfill those strategic goals of your organization. But then in the long term, we also talked about in previous chapters, and we'll continue to talk about how do we develop those new candidates, right? So we get them in the door, but how do we retain them in such a way that we develop them for the benefit of the organization and for them as well? And so those are things that you want to keep in mind as you are defining what your recruitment goals actually look like. The next part of your flow chart is selecting your approach. And this is one of those areas that I believe your text does a very good job of delineating the open recruitment approach versus the targeted recruitment approach, So I won't go into a lot of detail, but I do want to draw your attention to the advantages of when to use either type of those approaches. And so we see from this chart, the open approach is clearly the technique in and of itself. You advertise a position with a message that is appealing to a wide variety of job seekers, right? You're not honing in on any one specific demographic or type of employee, but you're just casting this wide net and you're using a large variety of media outlets. And we'll talk about media outlets in the next slide. But this is the kind of the fisherman approach is how I like to approach it. It is, I'm going to cast this wide net and pull my net in, and whatever I grab, that is the pool that I'm going to use. Now, the advantage to that is that you're definitely going to have a diverse set of applicants that are going to be contacted and considered because you are not focusing your efforts in, again, that one demographic or one niche. You really are being open to what you're considering. It's also lowering resource costs, and we'll consider that in the next slide as well. Is advertising is not free in most circumstances. You get what you pay for in a lot of circumstances when you're talking about advertising positions and recruiting. So you want to consider, again, as you're planning, am I advertising for the organization as a whole, or am I advertising for a specific position? What does my message need to look like? What does my audience need to look like? And How big of a net do I need to cast as I am trying to pull people in and to acquire our talent? And so that open approach is best used when you are, again, looking for large numbers of applicants. So, I live in York County. And so down here in York County, we have a plethora of warehouses that are going up and down the I-83 corridor. And so they would, of course, use this open approach, right? They use the billboards that says, up to $18, $21 an hour. And they list all these different positions that they are going to fill with that one board. They are not going to use this open approach when they are looking for their CEO of their organization. They're not going to use the open approach, quite honestly, when they're looking for their HR department. There are some areas and some positions that are so specialized that open recruitment method just does not work. But in situations like this, where you have a mass hiring, you have a lot of vacancies in one category or several categories, and you want to open up the pool as much as you can, and you have time to do so. Remember, we talked about in our goals in one of the previous slides that time is of the essence in some scenarios. And so if time is not on your side when you are trying to go through this process, then open recruitment type probably isn't the way you want to go. But if you have some time and you are more involved in your long-term strategic planning for recruitment, then this may be a good option for you. The other recruitment type or approach is that targeted approach. And that target approach is definitely focused in on the advertising. Your message is tailored to a certain labor market, specific KSOAs, certain demographics. You get a much narrower pool of applicants, very much more of a concentrated effort in terms of the qualifications that you're looking for. And it also has more of a personal approach. That's where your person organization approach may kind of align with the targeted approach, in that you are indoctrinating this individual into your organization. And so there is more of that personal connection and that engagement with them than there is when you're just massively hiring people. And so this targeted approach is really best used when the organization needs to meet a specific skill set. So this targeted approach, this is where you are going to fill your executive suite positions. This is where you're going to fill those technical positions that you need certain certifications and specifications for. These are the positions that you'll fill at those higher levels. And sometimes that actually equates to spending more money, but a lot of times it's worth it. Again, sometimes you have to pay for what you actually want to get. So keep that in mind as you are starting to communicate your message and you determine who your audience is, and then you figure out what approach you want to use to attract members of that audience. And next, we're going to look at our recruitment methods. There are so many different recruitment methods out there. Your book talks about using external sources. Here are just a couple of the ones that I think we're all familiar with from a social media standpoint. You have LinkedIn, which essentially has become the professional's resume grabber. And I use LinkedIn for myself. I know a lot of other individuals use LinkedIn. It's more of that social connection. And as a human resource professional, I cannot tell you how valuable it is for you to have a professional LinkedIn page and to make those connections with people who are out of your normal realm. It will come in handy when you are trying to acquire talent that, maybe it's the first time you ever tried to or had the responsibility for acquiring a certain position or a certain type of position. So making sure that you are resourceful in the connection that you make absolutely are beneficial to you in the world of human resources. But with that said, I want to take a look, assuming that the computer cooperates with me, I want to take a look at this one job I don't want to call it a job video, but it really is an advertisement for employment with the local school district. I think they did a pretty decent job with throwing their net out there to see what they get in terms of talent and the positions that they need to fill. But I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it once we listen to it. So let's take a look.
The school district of the city of Harrisburg is looking for highly qualified, passionate teachers to join our education team. Minority and bilingual applicants in all teaching fields are strongly encouraged to apply. For more information, contact the Department of Human Resources for information about competitive salaries and our comprehensive benefits package. Or email humanresources@hbgsd.us. Great opportunities await you in Harrisburg.
What do you all think about that recording? I thought it was short, sweet, to the point. It got the word out there. It gave you contact information. Didn't go into a lot of detail of all the positions that they're looking for, but it put that kind of bug in your ear to say, maybe this is somewhere I want to work. Clearly deals with children, has a diverse um, a diverse audience, diverse constituents. It's clearly education based. And so maybe this is somewhere where I can contribute my skill set to. And so it is definitely somewhere that some people would consider working, but I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. So please feel free to share those thoughts with me and with the rest of the class. And so, think about, the video that we just saw from two different perspectives. So, as an HR professional, what opinions would you have? Would you invest in creating short little skits like that you could throw up on your organization's webpage? This one was actually found on the organization's Facebook page. So is that beneficial? Not extremely costly. Does it do what you want it to do? If you were looking for employment, how would you react to the video? Would you be interested in at least learning a little bit more about the organization? Um, would you want to know more about the potential employment opportunities? Was it too much? Was it not enough? Um, just really, really interested in your thoughts. So as I said when I started this portion of the lecture, I really did just want to give you a high level overview of some of the key aspects of Chapter 5. Chapter 5 does go into talking about metrics. And again, as you recall, when we were looking at the flow chart, those metrics are vital to having and making informed decisions based on the data that you have after going through your entire recruitment process once. You look at the data, what worked, what didn't work, and you go right back up to your goal setting and you start all over again and make modifications. So definitely pay close attention to that metrics portion. Again, your book does a really good job of that, so I won't reiterate or rehash what they have already presented. This week, as part of your assignment and your midterm, you are going to have the ability to apply what you've learned thus far, in that you're going to be able to create your own mini version of a recruitment plan. And so you're already going to be given a job description, the reporting structure of the position, and you are going to be tasked with applying the information that you learned in Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, and quite honestly, all the way back to Chapter 1, all into a real life scenario of things that you would have to do as a new human resource professional. So I wish you each luck as you go through completing your assignment for this week. If you have any questions, please let me know, and have a great rest of your week, everyone.